Greetings. This is the notes for Unit 2, Origins of American Government. Go ahead and start by making a copy of the doc. Choose the File tab, choose Make a Copy. Go ahead and put your name in the front. Again, this will help whenever you're going back to look. And then put your name, date, and period in the top of the doc. We'll be starting this on Tuesday, January 18th, and continuing it a few dates. It should be, once I figure it out, it'll be, no, not the 18th. Thursday, January 20th, we should actually be starting this. Go ahead and put your period, name, date in there, and then you're ready to begin. It will be on multiple dates. I'm probably going to make a video for each section. We'll see. All right. This first section, this is about the beginnings of independence. There you have interactions between the colonists and the British. The big question for this unit, how did the American colonists form their ideas about independence and a new government? There are basically three basic concepts of government. Order government, the orderly regulation of government offices and units. This really comes from Britain. Sheriff, coroner, grand jury, townships. These are all mechanisms to organized systems. Limited government. Government is not all powerful. It has limits. And representative government. Government should serve the will of the people. I've already split my screen. I suggest you do the same. I'm going to go ahead and shrink it just a hair and then move it over a hair. Either when we're finished or when we start, write in the notes. Go ahead and clean up the little blanks. Got regulation. Mental offices. Let's just clean that up there. Government is not all powerful. And it should serve the people. Those are the basic concepts. Okay. There's three main and all-powerful English documents: Magna Carta, the Petition for Rights. The Magna. Let's go ahead and talk about each one, then we'll come back and fill in the blanks. The Magna Carta was basically forced upon bad King John in 1215. The main importance of Magna Carta is twofold. It's the first written law, and nobody is above the law. The king's power is not absolute, and this goes back 807 years as of the making of this video. The Petition of Rights, 1628. Charles I signed it in exchange for tax money from Parliament. And it really challenged the divine right of kings because the Parliament was pushing back on the king. The divine right of king last, even though the Magna Carta was out there, limiting the king's power. Eventually, Charles I, because he ignored Parliament, had a war with Parliament and lost his head too. Eventually, there's a fight for the throne, and in 1689, as a result of the Glorious Revolution, the English Bill of Rights is passed under William of Orange from the Netherlands, and Queen Mary of England. William Orange was a Dutch Protestant, and Queen Mary was an English Anglican, meaning she had the faith of the Church of England. She wasn't Catholic. She wasn't beholden to the Pope. But this showed that there was a place in Great Britain for Protestants and Catholics. The English Bill of Rights included the following rights: the right to trial by jury, due process, no cruel and unusual punishment, no excessive bail, and a right to petition the government or protest for grievances. So that's why when you see people protesting, that right goes back a long ways. Pictured here in the artwork is William and Mary. They were really heroes. Also, there's a visual of the Magna Carta, that really big written document on the right. All right, let's go ahead and write in the notes. If you have any questions about any of this, now's the time. Just raise your hand. Limited power. Money. Remember, the divine right of kings was saying that kings and queens were gods on earth. uh, when they mean cruel, they mean really cruel. A lot of the punishments were really cruel. They used to have a thing called the rack, beheading machines, drawing quartering. These are very excessive punishments. If you'd like to hear about drawing quartering, just raise your hand and I'll tell you briefly. It's pretty gross, though. Just a fair warning. Okay, let's go on to the colonies. So, as you see, we have this history of giving rights to the people um, in our original law that goes back to the Brits, because our law comes from the Brits, because that's where most of our people came from. All right, type of colonies. You have royal colonies. See the ones in purple, like most of the southern ones, and New York and Jersey, Hampshire, Massachusetts. Then you have proprietary colonies. See them in, I think that's a teal, and some off-white charter. I think we have Connecticut and probably Rhode Island. Yeah. All right. The English colonies. Royal colonial experiences, they led to a unique form of government, and it wasn't uniform. You had those three different versions. In royal colonies, the king would appoint a royal governor who would select the upper house of legislature, and the lower house was made up of qualified voters in the area. And so, but it was a two-house legislature, and 8 colonies had this, as shown above. Then you have what's known as the proprietary colonies. The proprietor selected the governor, and then either a unicameral or bicameral legislature made up of qualified voters. Those were the three in teal here. Looks like Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware. All right. And you have the charter colonies. These are chartered to the colonists. These are largely self-governed. So in those places, Connecticut and Rhode Island, they had a little more independence, and the governors would be elected. But the king did have approval rights, but that more came from the people than the other ones. Bicameral legislatures elected by voters, judges appointed by legislature, and these two are Connecticut and Rhode Island. So this is the history of the political systems in the original colonies. Let's go ahead and go back and write all that in. So we got royal colonies, where king appoints the leader, who selects the upper house. So the king and then that leader, royal governor, has most of the power with all that. As you might guess, this kind of rankled some of the colonists. They didn't have much voice. They had some. The proprietor selected the governor. They were elected, but the king had to approve, so it wasn't like a true full election. Oh, by the way, if you ever want to tighten this up, you see this little page break? You just double click here, and then it looks like it's kind of right in a row. I want to take a quick peek at this chart in full screen, and then we'll go forward. All right. Britain had the right to approve governor, but governor cannot veto legislature. So a little more power, proprietor free to rule. So these systems, the leader had a lot of power like William Penn or leader of Maryland, Delaware. I think Maryland was Lord Baltimore. Early leaders, Delaware, I'm not sure, but you see they got a lot of renown. Rhode Island, I think it was what was his name? I know Providence Plantations was part of the original name, but there was a guy, religious guy, Roger Bannister. Roger, I don't know. There was these places. The leaders had a lot of notoriety. These other 8 colonies were pretty much directly ruled by Britain with this royal version. Yeah. Anyway, in 1760, George III takes the throne, and he was of the belief that the colonists should take more tax burden because um, the Brits are having to provide for their security, so they should pay a little more. Um, Colonists saw this, however, as taxation without representation and unfair under the social contract theory espoused by John Locke. When they wrote the Declaration of Independence, it was definitely written to King George III. And write in the notes. Look at the next one. In this notes and this course, I'm not going to be going over the quiz answers. I'm going to expect you to figure that out on your own. As you see, the quiz is 50 of these 120 points. If you cannot successfully do the quiz, you will get like a D or an F on this assignment, but you won't get 0. You have to be able to do the quiz, otherwise, you're not demonstrating understanding. All right, moving on. Question for discussion. Why was it so difficult to get. Oh, skipped one. Um, British colonial policies. George. Oh, we got that. Early colonial unity. You had the New England Confederation, 1643. You have the Albany Plan. Albany is the capital in New York of Union. This was Ben Franklin's plan for Union. It was turned down by colonies and the king, so they weren't ready for this. Another 20 years later, they'll be ready, the colonists. So the king will not, which leads to the Revolutionary War. You get the Stamp Act in 1765. 8 colonies sent representatives to protest Stamp Act. They felt this was very unfair because a tax was passed without representation in Parliament in any form or fashion. Okay, so here you see the skull and crossbones with the Stamp Act, as well as a picture of Ben Franklin, as well as me taking a sip of water. All right. So before 1765, why was it so difficult to get colonies to join together and unify? Well, a few reasons. But let's see what I said originally. Let's see if we can take a look at what I said on this video, because now I'm curious. I'm also curious if this plays for you.
So the next big question for discussion is, why was it so difficult to get colonies to join together and unite prior to 1765? Well, prior to 1765, the colonists still thought themselves as being British, being from the United Kingdom, being part of the crown. They didn't think of themselves as different. In the next 20 years, they're going to start to, because of how they're treated actually in the next 10 years. So in addition, the people that wanted independence had so many different visions of that independence, it was hard to kind of come together around central ideas until they decided the biggest problem that they had was the English and to get rid of King George III. So eventually it all comes together. It just takes some time. And it's mostly because of loyalty to the United Kingdom. First Continental Congress, delegates from 12 of 13 colonies met in Philadelphia on September 5th, 1774, to protest what becomes known as the Intolerable Acts. It's just more taxes. Basically, the colonists' response was embargo. They refused to trade with the English until the taxes were repealed. And they had also set a second meeting for the next year. Here you see a famous political cartoon with a snake, that if the colonies don't join together to fight this oppression by the British, they're going to die. There's a visual, the Boston Tea Party, showing their opposition to these taxes as well.
This is the famous cartoon showing that without unity, colonists are going to be in trouble. So you see New England, New York, New Jersey, I don't know, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina. Not sure what that is, that Rhode Island. You see the dumping of the tea in the Boston Harbor. This is probably a meeting where the First Continental Congress met. Let's go ahead and jot down some notes. Hopefully this pace is comfortable. Not trying to go too fast, not trying to go too slow. Let's go up one. They met in Philadelphia. They refused to trade. That was the embargo reference. In 1775, the next year, there's another Continental Congress meeting, and this time all 13 colonies have representatives. It's really the first U.S. government with each colony or state having one vote. They chose John Hancock, who had quite a reputation as the first congressional president. George Washington was picked to lead the new army because of his experience in the British Army, as well as a plantation owner. Yeah, I think this should be next slide. Let's fix it on the notes. 10's a little off. Oh, there it is. It's okay on that one. Just got messed up on my notes. That can happen sometimes. Let's go ahead and look at the visual. Here you have the Second Continental Congress meeting. Let's see who we can recognize here. Definitely George Washington in the middle here. Oh, I don't know if I recognize any of the rest of them. This one, that might be Ben Franklin. I'm sure John Adams is there. Well, actually, this might be Jefferson. Ben Franklin. For sure, Washington. See how the ladies are in the back? So it wasn't even back then. Not sure. That might be Jefferson too. This might be Adams. I don't know. But yeah, another famous artwork of founding fathers. Here you have the Declaration of Independence. See John Hancock's big old signature right here. This is Ben Franklin, Jefferson, and I'm sure Adams. But it was basically a committee of five to prepare the document, but the main author was Thomas Jefferson, and he used ideas from John Locke. And this is adopted on July 4, 1776, and this is why we celebrate the 4th of July. If you look close enough, you'll see some other luminaries. I can't see too many. Well, I'm sure George Mason's on there, John Adams, Jefferson. I wouldn't be surprised if Franklin's on there. Maybe a Patrick Henry. These are some of the founding fathers. All right, let's go ahead and add into our notes here. By 1776, the states began drafting a variety of new constitutions. Some of the common features are popular sovereignty. Remember, as stated last unit, popular sovereignty is consent of the people. So it's kind of in review. Limited government. Government power had many restrictions because there was a concern of government overreaching because of how the British were teaching them. But then there became a concern with not enough government power, so you get this swing back when by the time the Constitution is fully adopted. 7 of the constitutions from the states had Bill of Rights, so 6 did not. Maybe they would have added them later. But separation of powers, checks and balances, which is the purpose behind separation of powers, is embedded in these various systems. And they're divided among 3 branches. I don't know if there's any unicameral legislatures, but you could probably look at Louisiana and Massachusetts. Massachusetts has organized themselves as a commonwealth. I'm not sure exactly how that works. Anyway, let's take a closer look. And I'll give you time to complete the quiz. Here you have a famous artwork. The Constitution's being ratified. There's the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Looks like April 1776. Some of these things are written in by hand. Very fancy writing. All right. Moving on. Go ahead and complete this open note quiz. I think I'll probably give you about 2 minutes to do this. Make sure you write at least 2 full sentences to fully explain your ideas on this. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I will not be sharing my answers on quizzes this semester. Thank you. Okay, it took me, I don't know, 2.5 minutes to finish the quiz. Make sure you're not using my answer. Anything reasonable will be accepted, but make sure it's 2 full sentences. Thank you. We're going to go on to the next video right now. But good job.